Ah, okay, that's fine.
Good morning, Carol. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for welcoming us again today for your session. It was absolutely a delight to meet you all, or some of you, at the your national conference. So thank you for inviting us back. And this is where this idea came from for the Central Digital Platform, because a number of you had said what that's all about. So this is what it's all about. And Adam's going to cover that in a lot more detail. And I'm thrilled I work with Adam, who's in the Cabinet Office. Or is it GCA now? We'll come back to that in a second. So, yeah, so thank you. So I'm Shelley Cooper. I'm the Crown Representative for Small Businesses. And those of you who have not come across this role before, I'll just briefly say my role is to lead the relationship within government for working with the ministers, working with civil servants and trade bodies, and supporting small businesses. So to make sure we look for the best opportunities for everybody to work together. So I'm thrilled to be in this role, and my role today is to introduce the Central Digital Platform and why do we have it, and what difference is it making, and why is the most important word. So, so thank you, Carol, for introducing my slides. And if you could just go on to the next slide already, please. I'm just going to cover in a couple of moments what this is all about, and my second slide covers my agenda, which says I'm going to just touch on what the Transforming Public Procurement's all about, the Procurement Act, what we've seen so far, and why the Central Digital Platform is worth looking at for you and your clients, and your small businesses that you work with. Because if they've not come across it before, this will be an opportunity to consider what good looks like for them. So, Carol, my next slide, please. So back in the day, many years ago, it feels that long ago now, the Cabinet Office, Small Business Panel, and DBT and small businesses and trade bodies came together over a long period of time to actually list what the barriers to entry were for small businesses. And this is 12 of them. And the Procurement Act 2023 goes a long way to addressing these in different ways. And the one we're going to look at today is the Central Digital Platform. So you can see there's plenty of barriers that are there. And I think if all buyers look at what this is in their procurement, we will find opportunities to bring more small businesses in. And that's a game changer for small businesses. Um, you probably know this already. There are 5.7 million businesses in the UK. 5.68 of them are small and medium-sized businesses with fewer than 250 employees and less than £44 million turnover. That's 99.9% of the entire business landscape. That's why addressing these barriers is so important. They employ 17 million people, and roughly 60% of the private sector workforce. And they generate over half of the private sector turnover, 51%, which represents £2.8 trillion. This is why this is so important, to make sure we find more small businesses coming through into public procurement. Buying from them. I think once we can reduce these barriers, it is an opportunity to have a multiplier effect in the communities and everywhere else. And we've seen that in the publications on this subject, for jobs, for innovation and regional growth. So moving on, Carol, to my next slide, please. And so this is what the Procurement Act 2023 addresses, the 12 barriers, and they do that by looking at simpler, more flexible commercial ways of meeting the goal to bring in more small businesses, opening up to new entrants, and an important aspect, excluding suppliers who pose unacceptable risks. But most importantly, embedding transparency, because small businesses need to know where the opportunities are and get feedback when it doesn't work for them, so they can address that for the future. That will be important for your clients to know, that they are entitled to have feedback as necessary. Carol, my next slide, please. And so my slides are quite detailed today, very kindly put together for me by the Cabinet Office. But there's two words that stand out so much for me in this, and it's important that your small businesses know about it. It is have regard. The legislation requires all buyers across government to have regard to the fact that small businesses may face barriers to participation those 12 that we've mentioned, and there'll probably be more. But that's what they're asked to do when they go to market. And they've all had to go through training to do this. I think it's about 10 hours of full-on online training plus passing in exams to enable to buy under this legislation. So they've got the technical skills and they've got the requirements to have regard. And I've got examples of where small businesses have gone back and said you didn't have regard, and they've pulled the tender and started again to have regard, and that those small businesses have been included in a constructive and positive way. So people are listening, and it is moving forward. And so the most important thing is, where is all this happening? And it's a central digital platform. So I'm not going to dwell on too much today because you really want to hear from Adam. And so the central digital platform is the one-stop shop. It's more like a one-stop shopping mall at the moment, but Adam's going to address that and tell you what that looks like going forward. And your small businesses need to know that the legislation does say that fair payment is important and 30-day payment terms are contractual throughout the supply chain. So this is what the new legislation is about. So history won't repeat itself in this way, because the Procurement Act 2023 is a once in a generation change in legislation supporting small businesses. And so it's worth having another look to see if it's suitable for you to consider selling to government if you're not already doing so. So my next slide, please, Carol. And so, just so you know, I gave these slides when I was at the Your National Conference, and they've updated a lot since then, and they'll have updated more since June the 10th, when Adam gave me these figures. And what's most important for me, that there's 93,000 notices published under this new legislation. And that was quite a hockey stick movement. The first 6 months were quite low because a lot of people got their notices out before the new legislation came in, quite rightly, because it was safe and known legislation to buy under. But this is like a hockey stick. It's going really well of what notices are coming out under the legislation, which will have the opportunities for small businesses. And 89,000 suppliers registered, and of that, 64,000 of them are small businesses. So it's going in the right direction. I'm not going to dwell on this for you today because it's the central digital platform we're talking about today. So moving on, please. And so just to summarize there, the pipeline is getting better, the notifications are there. There are examples of using the flexible procedures, and it's a positive legislation to support small businesses. And next slide, please, Carol. As I say, I was going to trot through them today because I think some of you have seen these. And so from your point of view, with you and your clients, what you might want to know is that all government departments that spend more than £100 million a year are required to have targets and action plans. And I know that from all the central departments, because I've worked with the departments to to help them work through what ambitious targets look like, and their action plans. And I would recommend to advise your small businesses that you work with, and for yourselves, is to look at those action plans, because many of them have mailing lists to join or people to contact about working with them as small businesses, and the events that they'll be hosting to find you as small businesses. So so that's an important part of the National Procurement Policy Statement. It's the requirement that all departments need to set targets, 3-year targets, and now VCSE targets as well. And that's worth looking at. So thank you. That's my, I think I've got one more slide.
Yeah.
So the next steps for you and with your clients is to understand those changes. And the one for today is the central digital platform. And you play well into small businesses, into social value, innovation and customer service. And please let them know that the businesses across government are looking to find small businesses. Sorry, the buyers are, and to register on the central digital platform, which is what we're going to cover now. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I'm conscious I really want to hand over to Adam quickly because he's got a lot to show you in the central digital platform. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Shirley. Hopefully people can see slides. Is that okay? Yep,
Yeah.
brilliant. Morning. As Sherry said, I'm Adam Hill. I'm now in the GCA, nearly a whole 2 weeks in the GCA. So I'm very excited about that. What I'm going to do today is a bit of a mixture of slides and a demo. There's lots of screenshots in the slides. I'll share them after the fact. So if the demo doesn't work, I can always fall back on that. So I was a Boy Scout. I am prepared. What I'm going to try and cover today is what the CDP is. I'm going to go through registration. I understand most of you, if not all of you, will have registered, but from some of the feedback that we get from users, I think it's important just to cover off what the distinction is between individual registration and organization registration. A bit about the supplier information side of the CDP, consortia, and then some bits around how your members and you can get the most benefit from it and what we're doing in the future. So hopefully this will all work. I'm going to start with what the CDP is. There's a bit of a misconception really that it's just find a tender, but with some new notices on. To all intents and purposes, publicly, that's what it looks like. But actually, we've built a lot of functionality in the back end to kind of enable it to do much more than that. So it's just a series of interconnected microservices, basically. So you've got the noticing element that people will be familiar with, where you go and search for what contracting authorities are publishing around opportunities. But we've built a bespoke sign-in and registration service that will give you organizational identification numbers and enable you to sit across multiple organizations. I'll go into that in more detail. Plus, there is the supplier information, which is, we think, super important for the small business and voluntary sector community because it enables you to kind of store your core answers and reuse them rather than going into systems and retyping all the time the same information time and time again whenever you're bidding. All of this is connected to eSender systems. So a lot of contracting authorities do their work on their own public procurement systems. These are interconnected, so we share data with one another through API. They publish their notices to us. We link out to them so they can get the supplier data and more information, et cetera, et cetera. And that's where Shirley's kind of this is a shopping center analogy comes from, in that when suppliers are looking at the notices and the adverts, they come into the central digital platform, they come into the noticing bit, they can see absolutely everything. So as they walk through the shopping center and they can see all the shops, but to actually do the bidding, they currently have to go into these external systems to actually do the bidding there, like you would go into the shop to buy some new clothes or records in the old days and things like that. So that's where that analogy comes from. Underneath all of that, we've got a data platform, which we'll be making much more use of in the future as we get more and more information. We start putting analytics and dashboards and things on the service itself so people can do their own bits and pieces. But I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to try and go through this relatively quickly. I'm not precious about being stopped if people have questions or if I'm not being clear, but obviously we've only got 40 minutes or so left, so I'll try and do what I can. First thing we need to do is for you to register on the service as an individual. And that's an important distinction to make, is that the first time you go in, it's you as a person. To do that, you'll go to find a tender, you'll click on create gov.uk one login, because we use their system to enable people to kind of authenticate and what have you, and because then it saves you more and more registrations on other gov.uk services. You've already got one through coming in here. Click in create, enter your email address, and then you'll be sent a code to that email address. It's really important at this stage that you remember you are currently registering as a person, not an entity. We see an awful lot of feedback from people who don't quite understand the distinction, so we need to be a bit clearer on that and make it better for people to understand, because they say, oh, I can't do my 2FA because so-and-so's got the 2FA and they're on holiday. 2FA is only at an individual level. It's not an organizational check. So it's when you're registering and signing in as a person. You register as a person, you get your personal code to you, you create your password exactly the same as you would do for any other service. You get tell us how you want to get your security codes for your 2FA. Remember, this is you as a person. So I've got it on my phone, for example, and I do it every time I sign in. You don't have to have an authenticator app. You can use other systems and services, but you would just set it up as you would do any other thing with a QR code or an email address or whatever, mobile phone. You'll get sent the code and then you log in. And that is how you sign yourself in as a person, excuse me. Once you've done that, you go back into the FTS element. That's the front page, and you'll see on the top right, you've got my account now. You click on that, agree to our privacy notice. You are more than welcome to read it. I know most people don't. And then enter your name and your last name. I appreciate it's a bit of a repetition, but at this point, you will have set yourself up as an individual in there. You'll see you'll have an email address, and you'll be given the opportunity to register an organization. And it's at this point that I'm going to try and skip across and go into a demo. Hopefully people can see my account with the email address a.hill@gca.gov.uk. Is that okay? Yep, getting some nods. Brilliant. That's worked seamlessly. In here, this is you as a person, your individual account, because you're, as an individual, can sit across multiple organizations. You see here, I've got a number here. This is my test site, by the way, just so you know. This is not the live data, but I've got buyer accounts, I've got test accounts, and that's not a me as a having sort of super user ability can do. You can have buyer accounts and test accounts if your organization may be contracted by the public sector to run public procurement on their behalf. You may act as both. Some contracting authorities also act as suppliers in some regard to others. So that's why you have the ability to be both a buyer and a supplier. And the same organization can be both. You don't have to have distinct buyer orgs, supplier orgs. So it's worth remembering that. When you go in, add an organization, you'll be asked who you want to register as, supplier, hit continue. Do you have a company's house number? If the answer is yes, you'll be asked to put it in, and all we'll do there is we'll use the company's house API and we'll pre-populate some of your basic information for you. If you don't, that's entirely fine. You just say no, continue. We'll ask you if you're any of the other registries. Just try and make my screen a little bit bigger so people can see. And again, not a problem if you don't have any of these. It's not a precursor to registration. Just say none apply. Every organization, buyer or supplier that registers on the Central Digital Platform is given a public procurement organization number, a PPOM. That is your identifier for your organization. And obviously, as you sit across multiple organizations, you can have multiple PPONs. So we'll just go with test supplier. Organization. At this stage, as you are registering an organization rather than you as an individual, because you've done that already, this is where you'll probably want to use a shared or group email address, so an inbox that's monitored by multiple people. So if someone's off, you can still get your information because this is you as an organization, as a business. Click continue, put in your address, will have pre-populated if you've already signed up with Company's House. Don't need to do that. And then we'll ask you what best describes your organization. And you can click as many as apply. So I'm just going to say that we're an SME, continue. Be given the opportunity to check your answers, click save. I'm not going to click save just because we've got several organizations already. So I'm just going to do a bunch of backs and we can pretend that we've already registered. I'm going to go down here. We've just registered test supplier 99. It's been approved, and this is the supplier view. So as we develop more and more functionality for the system, you'll have more and more tiles to click in to get into those bits and pieces. But the two main ones for you now are registered organization details and supplier information. Ignore Find a Grant at the moment. This is the test site, and that just links out to the existing Find a Grant site. Going to registered organization details. This is the information that I put in, but you'll see I've now been given my public procurement organization number. I'll need that as a supplier to give to contracting authorities when I'm bidding, because that's the kind of data that we want to collect to identify who's winning the business, et cetera, and allocating spend to them. You'll know it's a PPON because it's prefixed with a P. And then you can also go in and change your details as and when necessary as your company evolves. You can add organization identifiers if you get a Company's House number, etc. in the future. You can manage your users. So, you don't necessarily want to have one user only. You'll want to have multiple in case someone is off on leave. You can just add first name, last name, email address. They will be sent something, and you can give them permission to do different types of things. I'm going to skip through this quite quickly, but all of this information is included in the slides that you get. So you can determine what kind of access you want the person to have, and then they'll get an invite. It's important that they click into the service through the invite, because then they'll be automatically connected to your organization. They're more than welcome to register on their own without clicking. They can come through, and then they can just go into set up an organization and put in your organizational name, and we'll give them a list of organizations that match that. And then they'll be able to click through and join that way, but then they'll have to ask permission. So it's just much easier for them to use the profile that they're given. The main thing that you're going to want to do once you're in is complete supplier information. So that exists within your organizational details. It also exists as one of the tiles here. So this takes you to the same place. And this is where you will provide answers to core questions that you will be asked every time you bid, regardless of what you're bidding for or who you're getting it from, for sort of like above threshold stuff. And so the idea is you can put this information in here, save it, generate a code, share that with the contracting authorities time and time again. So I'll walk you through some of this. I'm not going to fill it in because it'll take us the rest of the session. But what I would say is, if you're not familiar with this, or if you haven't done these kind of things before as part of bids, click into the bits and pieces here. There's a lot of guidance around what this is, what we mean, how to update it, how to save your information, and what you need for each of the different sections. And within each of the different sections, there's loads of information as well around what we mean and what it looks like. So for example, people connected to your organization, when you click in to fill that information in, there's loads of stuff around what we mean, what you'll need. We click out to legal guidance if you want to get into that a bit more as well before filling it in. Stuff around qualifications, etc., and exclusions, mandatory and discretionary exclusions. So you'll put all that information in there. So we click back out. Really straightforward. You just click on here. Am I doing this as an organization or an individual? I am an organization. Pre-populated what we know from the organizational details, and then you can just add in bits and pieces here. So we will again pretend I've done all of this. We will go back to this one here, where I have one I prepared earlier. So you'll see organization, all of the information here that I've included. Lovely. Connected persons. So we've got information here around who they are, and we can update the information. We can add more as necessary. Qualifications, we give a little bit of guidance around what we mean. So here I've included health and safety qualification. So I'm not going to add any more, but people can, by all means, if people have questions. I'm not sure if I heard someone coming off mute. Trade assurances, again, same sort of thing. And then anything that excludes you from procurement. So now here, I put one in as a test just around one of the people who's a connected person is got exclusions related to cartel offences, because that sounded quite fun for the test purposes, not in reality, obviously. But there's loads and loads of stuff in here around what to do. I'm going backwards through that at the moment. But if we go into adding new ones, you'll see, as I mentioned, loads of guidance here, right? This is what we're talking about: penalties, convictions. This is what we mean. You can click out to the legislation for the definitions, etc., etc. And there's all of this information around what to include if necessary. Again, not going to fill one of these in because of the amount of time it will take. And then finance as well. So you'll be asked if you have them to upload some accounts. You can update this obviously on an annual basis, etc. We're not going to update one now. We'll just move away. Once you've done all of that and you're happy with it, I'll come on to this bit later because this is the test site, so there's stuff that won't necessarily apply to you just yet. Once you've done all of this and you're happy with it and you're ready to share it, you don't have to do anything with it straight away, but when you're bidding, you'll be asked to provide a share code. What that is basically a time-bound confirmation of the information that you've just entered into the system. We'll ask you just to confirm that it's accurate. It's your responsibility to own your data, and it gives that kind of little bit of certainty to the contracting authority that what they're getting is right. So you would just say, yes, I am. You'll be asked to say who you are or who is authorizing this on your behalf, what their job title is. That's not a job title. And then your email address. Where am I now? I'm GCA now. And your address. Once you've done that, again, you'll be able to check your answers, change anything you need to, but this is just your declaration that you've done the information correctly and you're happy with it. Confirm and get share code. And at this point, you'll generate one. So this is now specific to the information that I have stored at this date and time. If I don't update my information, I don't need a new code. I can just use this one time and time and time and time again. I don't have to keep re-entering my information. If it does update and I'm bidding for something, I want to come in, I want to update it, I want to generate a new code and give that to the organization that I'm bidding. It doesn't overwrite what has been shared previously. So any information you've submitted as for a bid before this one is still current, is still being used. Contracting authorities won't suddenly find that they're looking at something that's completely different because you've updated your information here. It's registered to the code that you're being asked for. Contracting authorities will tell you how they want this supplier information, either via this code, or if their systems are not yet set up to use our API, and some of them are not, they may ask you for a download instead. So you just click download your supplier information file. You'll get a zip file, which will be a PDF of the answers to all of the questions that you've just completed, plus any documents that you've uploaded to support your evidence. You'll just share that zip file with the contracting authority as part of your bid in the same way you would otherwise share this code for them to use. Come back into your organizational details. If we go, I believe, into declare here, you'll see all of the share codes that I've generated. It tells me the date and time I generated them on, and I can access my download here as well. Now, I'll be completely honest with you, pretty much all of these, the data hasn't changed because I've just generated it and demonstrating how to use it on the test service. But each one of these you can do here and you'll be able to see, yep, it's been updated, it's been updated. So you may be looking at updating that on an annual basis as and when you add accounts or whatever, or new qualifications, etc., etc. But as I said, the key thing is if you don't update your information, there's no need for you to update your information. You can use the code you've generated or the file you've downloaded as many times as necessary, as long as that information is still accurate. So that's how you would do your supplier information. As I mentioned, you can sit across multiple organizations in here. So you can, if you're working for different organizations, you're contracted to different contracting authorities to do different bits and pieces, you can skip through. Buyers, we do a little bit more validation on just to make sure that they are actually a contracting authority, which is why this example here has pending approval, just so you know what that means. But the way this will work is once you're in an organization, and let's hope this works, you go in to start looking for stuff on the find a tender element, we'll tell you in the top right who you are. So you'll be able to see quite quickly, I'm currently operating as this organization, and check whether it's the right one or not. Once you've done all of this, if you want to, if you're forming a consortium, for example, there is functionality to do that within the central digital platform as well. This lives at an individual level, not an organization level, because the individual may be sitting across multiple organizations. They may be inviting multiple organizations. So we just felt from the feedback we had, it made more sense to have this in the individual's profile rather than the organization's profile. To create a consortium, all you need to do is click on here, and you'll just need the share code of all of the member organizations. So to start off, you'll give it a name in the same way you would set up an organization, basically. Add in an email address. We'll use this one again, and then check your answers and save, etc., etc. Once you've done that, and come in and view your consortium, and you'll see your organizational information, and you'll see the organizations you've got in it. You just add an organization. All you need to do is just put in a share code, and it will ask you, do you want to add this organization to the consortium? Yes or no? Yes. Bang. And there we can see Guernsey company number 7 is in my share, is in my organization. When the consortium is ready to bid, all you would need to do is go through and create a share code in the same way that you would do before. So you would do your declaration, you would generate a share code specifically for the consortium, and then you would have, if you're doing the download, a PDF with test supplier 2, Guernsey Company 7 in order, the answers to all of their questions there. And that's what the contracting authority will get as well. You'll also notice that the test consortium has been given its own PPON. So it's got its own organizational identification number, starts with a P because it's a PPON, ends with a C because it's a consortium. So these are the kind of bits and pieces that are done through the system. Go back to search. Is this going to work? Yep, brilliant. So now you can see I'm operating as the consortium in here. One of the things that's beneficial to small businesses in particular, but all suppliers, is the ability to search and set up save searches exactly as you could do previously in Find a Tender and Contracts Finder. So you do your search, you search for whichever kind of services you're looking for. You can add in CPV codes to kind of check what sort of sector you want. I don't know if that pop-up will have shown on the screen, so I'll move away from it. Likewise, you can search by geographical region. You can give yourself value caps if you want. You can check for flags. Yep, I want something that's been flagged as suitable for SMEs. Am I looking for frameworks, dynamic markets, etc., etc.? And then you can update your results, play with it, refine your keywords. At the moment, remember that this is quite basic keyword search. And so if you want to get something that's super specific, use quotation marks. If you want a series of things, use quotation marks and plus, for example. Update your results. When you get the kind of things that you want and you're happy with, click Save Search. Again, not sure if this will have popped up on the screen or not, but it's in the slides. There'll be a pop-up box around Save Search criteria. You can give your search a name and you can specify how frequently you want email alerts telling you that there are new notices that meet your search criteria. And then you can manage those save searches as well. I'm gonna try and skip to another one. I'm gonna jump ahead on some of the stuff I was gonna talk about. What we are doing now, though, is developing a new summarized search, which we deploy to the service fairly soon. So this is a prototype, and this will automatically kind of break down things by opportunities. So you can look at pipeline, pre-market engagement, planned or active tenders, for example, awarded contracts. So you can look for things that are closed contracts or contracts that are active, and commercial tools. So you'll be able to look at frameworks, dynamic markets, etc., etc. These kind of things, depending on what you're looking for. Same sort of thing with the keyword search, by the way, is much more intuitive. You can also look for specific contracting authorities in the future. So if there's someone you specifically want to work with, or you know there's an opportunity, you can filter by them or just by type. And suitability, again, we've got the SME and VCSE flags. You can still search by sector. You can still search by value if you want to put a cap on. You can apply the filters. You can save the search in the same way. But the other thing as well is, once you're happy, and if you want to, you'll be able to export the results into a CSV file, take those away and kind of run through them as well to your leisure. Not sure how useful that will be for you as suppliers, but certainly data consumers and contracting authorities want the ability to kind of look at this information and take it away and do bits and pieces. So this is in quality assurance testing at the moment. There's some limited pilot group kind of working with it, and all being well, this will hopefully be live sort of autumn time for you to start using. Those are the kind of the key benefits of the service as is. I'm going to jump back to my slides, skip through everything we've just done. You'll see here as I'm speeding through them, loads and loads of screenshots and some explanatory text for you to look at. This is the pop-up that you might not have seen when you're doing your search criteria and you're saving your searches. But yeah, we're looking at more stuff to make it better. Like I said, just showed you the summarized search. You will have seen this in the test environment. We're looking with commercial policy around how we expand the amount of data you can save and store as a supplier. So you've got the basic stuff that we showed you as we went through a few minutes ago, but we're also looking to add things like carbon net zero, data protection, etc., where you don't always get asked these questions. You'll mostly be asked these questions by central government departments rather than wider public sector organizations, but you may be. You won't always be asked them. If you are asked them, the questions don't generally change, and your answers, I would expect, are fairly standard to them. So likewise with the other stuff, you can create, put your answers in here, store them, and then when you generate your share code, these will be included in that share code alongside everything else. You may have noticed when I was walking through the test service that there was also a thing about Welsh modules. That's because Welsh Government have asked for a couple of specific bits and pieces that we've worked with them on. So they're being checked and tested, and hopefully they'll be released later on in this year as well. So for any suppliers that are bidding for Welsh contracts, you will probably be asked to do some additional bits and pieces. One of the other things that we're looking at that we're hopeful is going to be particularly of use for small businesses and voluntary sector organizations, and that we hope will deal with more of those barriers that Shirley showed you at the beginning, is a thing that we're tentatively calling procurement partnerships. Now, the Department of Science, Innovation and Technology have recently announced something similar to this, so we're having conversations with them around what it means. They're focusing specifically on innovation. We want to think about how we just open up the market more and facilitate conversations between buyers and suppliers to get better pre-market engagement and better quality procurements that result in small businesses having a better chance. So what we're looking at is how do we use the central digital platform where contracting authorities have to be registered. You've seen from Shirley's slide, there's like over 3,000 registered. Suppliers have to be registered. So I think there's now nearly 67,000 SMEs registered, for example. They're all there already. How do we facilitate that? How do we give them the opportunity to talk to one another? Do we kind of ask contracting authorities before they do formal pre-market engagement to kind of post notification of things that they're thinking of doing, problems they're trying to solve, challenges they've got, and invite the market to respond to those? Do we give the market the opportunity to kind of identify contracting authorities they think they'd be particularly good at working with and pitch to them? We really want to enable dialogue between suppliers. So if you see someone that's working in the same sort of sector as you are, and you kind of want to partner up, if you think there's something out there that's maybe a little bit too big for you on your own, but a couple of you or a consortia would be good, and you don't know who to speak to, can we facilitate those kind of connections and conversations that you can then come back and use the consortia creation functionality and bid that way? These are the kind of things that we really, really want to explore, and how we use the data that is in the system to give you as much information as possible, focused information as possible, so you can target your bids and make better use of your resources as much as you can. This is just like a prototype page that we've been playing with, proof of concept sort of thing, to see how it might work, and we're going to do some testing on that. This is subject to us getting funding to go forward and develop this further, and then we'll do a big discovery. So we may well come back out to this organization and speak to you as members and to represent your clients around, do you think this will work? Is it the kind of thing you're looking for? If not, how can we refine it? If so, how can we refine it? Those kind of bits and pieces. Like I said, we're doing dashboarding at the moment. I talked about the data platform as being part of the central digital platform. We want to make this kind of information much more readily available and easy to interrogate. So we're getting all of this rich data around pipeline all the way through to award, contract performance, KPI information is being published. Departments and contracting authorities are now having to start to publish payment information. So we're going to use all of that rich data and make it possible for you to kind of look by location, for example, which contracting authorities are having opportunities or having contracts in my specific sector. Who are the SMEs or who are the businesses that are winning these kind of contracts? Do I partner with them? Do I want supply chain opportunities? When are these things going out to market again? Can I bid for them? Are there various people I want to talk to about these sorts of things? And just let you kind of have as much information as possible that you can customize and refine to make use of, rather than it just sitting there as this kind of big wall of data that no one can penetrate into. I should say with this as well, we want to kind of use these two things together, so that this sort of procurement partnerships makes use of this data here, and we perhaps say to contracting authorities, yep, you want to let this kind of contract, or you've got this kind of problem. Did you know there are these SMEs in this area or in this sector who are operating at a high level or have got a history of bidding for these kind of things? Make sure you speak to them and involve them in your pre-market engagement. Likewise, supplier, we know you set up your safe searches to cover the following, but we've noticed you're interested in these sorts of things as well. There are contracting authorities over here that are doing this bits and pieces. Bit more of that matching, again, focus, better quality use of the data rather than just trying to plow through it all. Obviously, not everything always works the way we would want it to. And there is the opportunity for recourse should you feel it necessary. So within GCA now, they've moved over as well. There is the Public Procurement Review Service and the Procurement Compliance Service. So this is where you would go to for recourse in the event that things aren't working. You primarily use the PPRS, as that is looking at specific procurements. So if you find something you think hasn't been done fairly, Shirley talked about have regard. If you think people are not having regard to SMEs, that they're specifically designing things to make it harder for SMEs to get into, or you think that the regulations aren't being followed or evaluation isn't being done properly, you can raise that with PPRS and they'll do an investigation. Alongside that, we've got the Procurement Compliance and Service, which is looking much more at systemic non-compliance. So like if an organization isn't publishing notices, for example, or it's not paying suppliers on time regularly, it's not publishing payment information, these are the kind of things that the PCS would investigate. So you're likely to be more engaged with the PPRS. There are links to these on the central digital platform. You can click out from the service into these bits and pieces. You can see the scope and remit, and it'll tell you how to get in touch with them. Hopefully, you won't need to use these services, but they do exist should you need to. That's everything I've got. I appreciate that was a pretty quick canter through. I do have a tendency to speak very, very quickly. But if there are questions or anything people want me to cover off a bit more or get into, I'm more than happy to spend some time on that for you.
Okay, we've got some questions already in the chat. So if I'll briefly go through those, Adam and Shirley, and then we've got some hands up as well. So I think Rajesh has just mentioned that he feels that there should be proper guidelines and training to buyers, but I think you covered that, Shirley, in your slides, didn't you? That there is that training.
Yes, it's formal training to do the legislation, and then there's also a communities of practice where the buyers are invited to come together. And I think there's 13,000 buyers across government are part of a community of practice to help them with this new legislation to embed it with good practices. So it is a work in progress, and we do recognise there are a lot of buyers across government, and there is training available, but it is new legislation to be embedded. Yes, agreed.
I think as well. So
that?
yeah, it's just Rajesh, I think, is speaking more about suppliers registering on the system and the difference between individual and organization. So the slides.
Sorry, Adam, just to interrupt. There's two different topics. For Shirley, it was related to when we've failed on a tender. The quality of feedback we get doesn't help me understand what the buyer's mindset is. So the training I'm suggesting is for buyers, because the needs and mindset in the private sector is very different to the public sector. And we haven't quite got around to understanding what it is that the public sector is looking for. So we're struggling to find the right content to present to them. So that was for Shirley. For yourself, yes, I've logged in twice, same name, two different emails. One, I can see organizational details. The other one, I don't. So I'm still really confused, and I'd like some guidelines, if you've published some guidelines on how to work around that.
Yeah, apologies,
helps.
Rajesh, and apologies, Carol and Shirley. I didn't scroll up and see Rajesh's previous question. Yeah, so Rajesh, I'll share these slides afterwards that I cantered through. They've got screenshots and guidance and a walkthrough. I appreciate this isn't available for everybody. On gov.uk, if you search for public procurement and suppliers, there is a page dedicated to information for suppliers, and there are videos showing you how to register and how to set things up and how to make use of the system. Very similar to what I just showed you there. My colleague in the commercial policy team, Lisa Stubbs, does a wonderful job of narrating and taking you through it. If you are having problems, Rajesh, specifically because if you've registered twice and are still struggling, I'm more than happy for Carol to share my email address and we can have a conversation offline, and maybe we'll do some screen sharing and I'll walk through it and see if we can solve the problem for you.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, so you've got your hand up. Have you got a question?
I have. Yeah, thank you, Adam. That was really, really helpful. we have already registered on the CDP and we've already put in our organisational details, and I can understand exactly how that would save time and not having to do PQQs over and over again. What's really, really exciting to me, though, is the potential for this to be proactive. You're dead right when you say the current search facility isn't intuitive. Far from it. You've got to know what word to put in, and if you don't know the right word, you're not going to get the answer. So dead interesting to know that there's going to be this updated search facility. My question is, I've got two. The first question relating to that is, do we get notification when these updated facilities come on board, or do we just not? That's the first question. And the second question is the extent to which this applies to local authorities. So I appreciate our contracting bodies, but for many of our SMEs, the amount that which they're going to be contracting for is potentially smaller than perhaps central governments. So could you just take us through those two, please?
Yeah, of course. It's a great point. We're very, very good at telling contracting authorities when we've released new functionality. We're not very good at telling suppliers. That's entirely fair, and we need to. So what I will do is when that functionality is deployed, I'll get in touch with Carol and ask her to pass that on to you guys as members. I'm sure I'll be badgering Shirley enough that it'll be all over her LinkedIn as well. And we'll look to kind of update that supplier page I mentioned on gov.uk as well. But absolutely, I think there is a gap that we need to fill around the supplier communications. And I'll be completely honest, I think some of it has kind of fallen between two stools in that Cabinet Office's overarching view is, well, that's Department of Business and Trade. They speak to the suppliers. We speak, and Department of Business and Trade think you own the procurement legislation, the CDP. Why aren't you doing it? Exactly. The point around the local authorities and things like that. So obviously, I think anything over £30,000 has to go on to the central digital platform, and anybody bidding for something over, being successful in winning something over £30,000 will have to be registered on the CDP to have a peep on when they're doing it. Anything below that, I think it's still kind of like standing instructions for councils or whomever. They can do what they want to do as long as it's, their written instructions. What we're kind of hoping would be a byproduct of that procurement partnerships thing that I talked about is that will that enable us to kind of facilitate conversations that capture more of that spend, more of those opportunities that don't live on a central system, that only live on the local bit? How can we fill that gap? Because I think in designing the legislation, we've had lots of conversations with local government association and various other people, Federation for Small Businesses, and there was a kind of, what is the right tipping point between this is now a burden because we have to do everything as a contracting authority versus we've got to give as much information as possible to businesses, because a lot of SMEs don't want stuff that's massive. If I'm a window cleaner looking for an education contractor to do stuff for the schools, I'm not necessarily looking at a contract that's like £500,000. I'm probably looking at 25 grand a year to do 3 schools, maybe. I don't know. And that's not going to be on the CDP. So we need to find a way to kind of fill that gap as is appropriate so that small businesses can better find those smaller contracts. Don't have the answer yet, which is why I'm really interested to have conversations with the likes of yourselves around, will this procurement partnerships thing be the right kind of answer? And if not, what else do we need to do? Fully accepting that the conversation we have with contracting authorities is going to be, I've already got all of this stuff I need to do, and now you want me to do this as well. So how do we sell the benefit to them? That's a real trick for us. So thanks, Sue. That was a great couple of questions.
Okay, M. Botti, you're next with a question.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Adam, for the articulation. My name is Dicky Botti, Director for Next Technologies as a tech startup company. My question goes to the collaboration or partnership for procurement. You raise a very good point when you say like where supplier to supplier can work together or buyer to buyer can work together. Now, my question is, can it be made more, let's say, granular when it comes to identify, let's say, as a tier 1 supplier who wants to subcontract let's say another supplier, where they'll find a specific match within the dashboard rather than going to search, or let's say, as if my company wants to contact a Taiwan supplier, can I get a match within the dashboard automatically to know which company, based on what category I have, let's say, identified myself in that platform. So it may be much easier for someone to know and save time on how to able to have that communication and, let's say, arrangement within the shortest time possible. Give an example is currently I was working through an Excel sheet where I have to go through the people or the company which have been awarded the contract and send them an email to see if they can able to subcontract me as a subcontractor. Get. So the thing is, like, instead of me doing that, can the dashboard or automatically using maybe leveraging AI and stuff, using a smart way on how that information can be properly available, linked automatically based on the information that we shared or we have shared on the system. Thank you.
It's a good question, and it's the kind of thing that we need to investigate as we do the discovery and determine whether that sort of functionality is feasible and or appropriate. I'm not going to pretend that contracting authorities don't tell tier one suppliers who to use in their supply chain. I think we all know that does happen from time to time. Probably shouldn't, but it does. We can't prescribe. We shouldn't prescribe to tier ones who they use in their supply chain. They should do things. So if you're asking, can I automatically be matched with them to work for them? I don't think we could do that. But could we develop functionality that automatically says, hey, tier one, here's supplier that's good at this sort of stuff. You might want to have the conversation around whether they're the right fit for you to put in your supply chain. It's tricky. Supply chain is really tricky, which is why we want to explore this partnerships thing a bit as much as we can. I mean, in the past, we've had policy overlays that tell contracting authorities they have to tell their tier ones to let any new supply chain opportunities relevant to this contract publicly so people can bid for them, so SMEs can bid for them, but then tier ones will just turn up with an intact supply chain and not add to it through the life of the contract. It's a difficult one. So I'm not going to promise anything, but it is something we want to look at around how do we use the data that we've got and how do we kind of open up those opportunities and make things better. But yeah, so certainly it's something that we'll be looking at as part of the discovery. Thanks for the question.
All right, thank you, Adam. Cheers.
Alex, I think we've got time for one more question. If you want to ask that, Alice, if you keep
Carol.
it brief. I know what you
there
like.
There we go. If I keep it, yeah, we used to calm down, Carol. I'll get over it. Basically, Adam, there's a couple of things. One is, will anybody be reviewing the tenders which are going out? Because I'm mindful that on occasions there's duplication and displacement in terms of the beneficiary. So I'm just intrigued as to, as things come on, are we going to be looking at how that sits both at a local level and a strategic level? And then the second piece is a number of the organisations which look at going forwards to put in for these opportunities may want to bring with them match funding. And what we find quite a lot at the moment is match funding is not even taken into consideration. And I know that a lot of the NEN members historically, when we were doing ERDF tenders and things like that, would be putting 45% match towards some of these to actually increase the level of funds that are available within the opportunities. More of a co-created model in terms of looking at how you can use the best funds available and then maximize it with what other partners can bring in. That sometimes gets lost. So I'm just wondering whether or not that could be captured at any point if match funding is a requirement within certain activities. So is that short enough, Carol?
I was going to say, perhaps pleasingly enough for Carol, my answer is going to be super short. Unfortunately for you, Alex, my answer is going to be we've strayed into policy, which is beyond my area of expertise.
That's fine, Adam. That's fine.
But I'm happy, Carol, if you want to share my email address with Alex.
Yeah.
If you want to send me the questions through, I can find someone in the commercial policy team who can help you with those.
100%. Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it. Thanks, Shirley.
Okay.
Alex, thank you for those questions. When you meet up with the people in the policy team, I'd be delighted to join you to understand more. It's very complex.
Yeah, so
it is. The more I know, the more I can support. So thank you.
No, that's good. We'll get a meeting in. I'd love to discuss it further. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, Adam, we've still got some questions in the chat. Are you happy for me to send them on to you?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And then obviously if anybody, we will be sharing the slides with everybody and also the recording. And if anybody's got anything that they want to ask, if we do it, we try and manage it through ourselves so that you're not getting inundated with lots of different emails, but if
That
we manage
might
that, are
be
you
easier.
happy for us to
Yeah,
to
yeah,
do
absolutely. I mean, I think
Yeah.
in the last 10 seconds, I can try and bang on for a couple of them. So Lauren
Yeah.
asked a question around pulling in additional attenders from elsewhere. Yes, we do. So all the procurement platforms that are used by the public sector are connected to us via an API. They publish the information. So the contracting authority will create the information on their system, and it will be published onto the CDP, onto the FTS element automatically. Likewise, they then use the API to pull the information back out. People should not be publishing new opportunities to Contracts Finder. I think someone did answer that question in there. The only things that should be going on Contracts Finder are award notices for call-offs from frameworks or procurements that were commenced under the PCRs. Anything new should be on FTS, on that element of the CDP, above or below threshold. But if there are any others, Carol, I'm happy to take those offline.
No, I think just people who've had to leave the meeting, but really thankful for the session, and that they found it really, really useful. So thank you so much, Shirley and Adam. I think it's been a great session, and like I say, we will share the slides as well, and any follow-up that comes from that will come through us, and we'll manage that. So, but really appreciate your time. Thank you very much. And I hope
Thanks.
everybody else has enjoyed the session
Yeah.
and found it
Yeah.
useful.
Yeah, good session. Thanks, Carol.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Adam.
Carol.
Yes,
Thanks,
thanks.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, then.
Thanks.
Enjoy the rest of your